Do you have a hyperlordotic lumbar spine, and would you like to flatten that curve? What I'm going to do in this tutorial is talk about 3 or 4 steps on how to be able to go from a hyperlordotic curve to the spine to a normal lordotic curve to the spine. If you get to the end of this tutorial and you like what you see, you like what you hear, and you want to help get yourself out of the lordosis that you have, or the hyperlordotic curve to the spine that you have, please do click the link below, go to my How to Overcome and Correct Lordosis 12-week program, where we go through a similar system that I'm about to talk about to release muscle tension, build muscle activity in the right areas so you can flatten the lumbar curve and have a better posture to the lumbar spine. In part 1, I want to talk quickly about the anatomy that I'm going to be referring to in the rest of this tutorial in the other parts. So we're going to be basically talking about the psoas muscle, because the psoas muscle is probably the most important in all of this. It goes from the lumbar spine here, so each 5 lumbar vertebra, and a little bit into T12 and up into the diaphragm. So it joins there, goes through the pelvis, and joins onto the inside of the leg. Now, because of its position and because of where it originates and inserts, this is the muscle that pulls on the lumbar spine and causes it to go into a hyper-extended position. What then starts to happen is we can get an anterior pelvic tilt to come with it. The anterior pelvic tilt is more to do with the iliacus muscle, which is on the front side of the back of the pelvis, if that makes sense. And then you've got what would be the anatomy of the fascia and the muscles on the anterior part of the hip and the lower part of the torso. So that is TFL, rectus femoris, and the fascia that goes with that. So you would be thinking about the sort of the superficial front line, which joins all of this together, and in part the superficial deep line, which brings together the psoas down into the adductors and can cause all the knees to fall in and the feet to collapse, so on and so forth. So that's the anatomy that I'm going to be referring to throughout all of this. So what we're now going to do is start talking about some simple stages that you need to be considering when you're trying to correct and overcome and improve that hyperlordotic spine. So part 1, and I guess throughout all of this, the rest of this tutorial, we're going to be talking about the posture of the hip and the posture of the spine. And what we're going to do is we're going to make it very easy to change the posture, and then we're going to start to make it very much harder to change the posture. But those are progressions in themselves, because as the position gets harder, we want to be able to maintain the posture of the hip and the spine, so we know that the musculature and the fascia is doing what we want it to do, which is basically loosen off so we can reposition the spine. So stage number 1 to this would be to go into the quadruped. Now, if we've got hyperlordotic in the spine, we're going to have our bum sticked up like that, and we're going to have a real strong curve in the lower spine. Now, what we've done here, because we flexed the hip, all the musculature has gone slack at the front of the hip. So it's very easy to go from this position to this position. So we've got the movement that we need. So if we are stuck in this position, what we need to do is just flatten it off, or we go into the rounded and then we kind of go, right, that's my position. That's sort of the midway point between that hyperlordosis and the flex spine. So we kind of go, right, there's my position. So that's what I now want to recreate. So we can use exercises maintaining this position of the spine using the abdominal brace, and that's the kind of position that we want to get into. So that's the first step, is just know the position of the spine that you want and know the position of the spine that you need. And that's very easily done via that quadruped position. Now, you would put other exercises around this to be able to maintain that position. But what we're now going to do in part 2 is we're going to take that position and we're going to challenge it. So we're going to try and bring ourselves out of that position with the position, but we're going to maintain our posture in the correct position. And then we'll start talking about the stretches and the exercises that we need to be able to maintain that and make it easier. And the position that we're going to use is called half kneeling, or being on one knee. So we come down into this position, So what we've got now is we know the position of the spine we want. So we don't want our bum sticked out like that. We want to maintain the position of the pelvis. So we bring that under, we use the abdominals, and we try and keep a straight line from the knee through the hip, up to the shoulder and up to the ear. So that's our position. Now, in the quadruped position, I said that we brought slack to this front of the hip, which makes it very easy to move the spine like so. But what we've done, on one side, we've created length through there. So when we go into a stretch, so this is a useful stretch for the anterior musculature. So what we do is we would just then lean ever so slightly into that. But what we first need to do is get that position. So we brace the abdominals, we activate the glutes. So they're the two muscles that we need to activate. So we bring them into position and then we just lean forward into it. And then we just challenge this, the fascial sheaths and the musculature just to open out so we can hold that position. So we make it easier to do it just on that one side. What we've got here is slack on this side, so we're not putting full tension through the whole system, we're just putting it through one side. What we would then do is swap over the side and do exactly the same. We've got slack on this side now, we've got full extension through this side, and we would do exactly the same. We would have the tension going through the one side, just trying to open it out, so when we come out of there, it's much easier to go back in and maintain the position of the spine that we need. So there are exercises, obviously I've shown you that one stretch that you can do. The same as an exercise, we just don't go into it. But what we do for the exercise, we stay on one knee and we just activate here and here. So built into this position is a stretch and is an exercise. And we just hold that position and then we can use it as a stretch by leaning forward. So we've got a stretch and an exercise there. There are more. We do need to do other things for that. But for the purposes of this tutorial, we're just going to focus on the different stages and how we need to improve and how we need to structure the session to show that improvement as we go through. So the first one is being down on one knee in the half kneeling position. The second position is very simple. It's down now on two knees. So we come down into this position, we come down onto two knees. So what we've done now is we've created extra length because we've got the bent knee, so we're putting extra length through the anterior, but what we're also doing, we're putting both length through either side. So what we're doing now is, again, we're trying to activate glutes to flatten the pelvis, activate abdominals to flatten the spine, and again, we're holding this position. Now, what we can then start to do is, if we want to enhance this, what we would do is we would come up into this position, and then we can enhance that elongation through there. So although we're using this position as the measure, we have additional exercises in the half kneeling, we have additional stretches that we can be doing through the adductors, through glute medius, glute minimus, through those exercises that we will want to be doing. But that kneeling position is then the measure at which we can easily get into the half kneeling. Okay, the next challenge is, can we easily get into this kneeling position? And then we would use exercises and stretches to do it. An exercise to activate glutes would be bridge. An exercise to activate abdominals and obliques would be a side plank. So it's very simple to be able to build this into a program where we are getting all stability around the spine, but also we're measuring our progress through the half kneeling and into the kneeling position. To quickly go over what we've talked about, when it comes to the hyperlordotic posture of the spine, what we want to be able to do is open out the psoas, the iliacus, rectus femoris, TFL, and the anterior fascia in the superficial line and the deep line, which includes the adductors as well. So that's the quick anatomy. How we then need to be able to do it: first of all, get into the quadruped position, put slack into the anterior hip, and position the spine. Stage 2 is to take that, come up onto one knee, and then have slack through one side, extended through the other. Again, position and stay up tall swap the sides, do the same on the other side. Once we've got to there and made that easy, is then the second one is to go into the third position, which is onto both knees and then holding with the extended hip on both sides, holding that position, again activating glutes, activating abdominals, but we need to do that with exercises. Exercises that we've talked about would be bird dog. Stretches that we talked about would be the half kneeling position with the hip extension. We've also talked about the exercise just down on one knee and activating glutes and abdominals, and then we would be talking about bridges, side planks. I've mentioned bird dogs, and you could also add planks in, plus some exercises where you're on your feet trying to improve range of movement through the hip as well. So that is a very, very brief overview of the kind of progress that we take through the online 12-week program. So if you like what you see, like what you hear, you want to get involved in that program, click the link below. If you've enjoyed the tutorial, please do hit the like button. If you've learned something new, hit the thanks button. If you've got a comment or a question, please do leave it below. If you want to watch more tutorials like this, please do hit the subscribe button or the bell icon.